Everyone, thank you for jumping in. We're going to be talking about TCPA guidelines, and I'm excited because I've got Megan and Dave here. They're with Lofty, and if you're a Lofty user like I am, not only am I a Lofty user, but my brokerage is Y Realty. We've been watching them shift over the last month, possibly a little bit more. They're changing some things on the back end to make it a lot easier for us so we don't have to worry about any of the guidelines. And that made me really happy. In fact, Dave, I watched one of those pop up on Lofty and it said, hey, this person's been in your database for a lot longer. You may want to reach out to them because you don't want to call them after this time. I'm like, what? You guys already changed it? This was December. I was like,
Yeah,
that's pretty cool.
yep. A lot of the things that we'll show you today are live in the product as well, that were released very recently. So we're very excited to show you guys.
All right, guys, let us know what city, what state, what country you're from. I am from Malibu, California, and Dave and Megan are in Phoenix headquarters for Lofty. Guys, where do you want to start with this?
Yeah, so I thought what we'd do is I will talk through um, some of the general type FAQ stuff. Sort of what are the things that you most need to understand as a real estate professional. Um, some of it's a little bit boring, so we'll try to get through that as quick as possible. And then we can get into the more exciting stuff, which is what is Lofty doing about this to support all of you. And Megan is going to walk us through that, including showing us some live product examples. So really excited to get to that and show you what we've all been working on and get some feedback on it.
Let's
So
go.
if you're ready to roll, I think well, as being a marketing guy, right, I had to build some slides. So I will share some of those and we'll get started.
We've got a full house, everybody from all over. So really nice to see that.
All right, can you guys see that okay?
Got you.
Excellent. All right. All right, so first things first, what's changing with TCPA that has everyone kind of running around trying to figure out what's going on? If you're not aware, the TCPA stands for Telephone Consumer Protection Act. It was originally designed to essentially protect consumers from unwanted marketing phone calls and text messages, largely from sort of robotic operations. You probably heard robodialers, those types of things. And what's changing specifically is that the Act is now adopting the FCC's new one-to-one consent rule. So that means now, under the TCPA, anytime you want to communicate to your leads or to a consumer, let's say, via a call or a text message, you are going to be required to obtain what's called one-to-one consent. But it's not all as scary as it sounds, right? So this change only applies to the use of what they're calling regulated technology. You'll see that in quotes there. And so the definition of regulated technology becomes really important. And we will go through that a little bit later. But if you really want to just kind of simplify the whole thing down to a sentence, it's really just this. And it is, as of January 27th, which is right around the corner, real estate professionals and frankly, all business owners in all industries will need to obtain express written consent from each lead before calling or texting them using regulated technology. Make sense?
So
All right, so
far, you made it easy, buddy.
all right, that's the goal. Okay, so what is regulated technology? This is kind of important. So we believe it includes the following things. The first one is auto dialers. They're referred to as ATDS. We can go into more detail on this if you want, but it can be kind of a rabbit hole. And this is certainly the sort of grayest area, I would say, of the technology. The second one is pre-recorded or artificial voice calls. If you're using those in marketing, that's considered regulated tech. And then any kind of outbound voicemail technology, whether or not the message that you're leaving is generated by the agent or via AI, all of those sorts of pre-recorded or ringless voicemail texts are going to be considered regulated. And so I think like a lot of the theme of our message today is this whole thing isn't quite as scary as it sounds, but it is important to understand what it's about and then take steps to apply best practices to avoid any potential risks and penalties, because those things are very real. You can see here, they are suggesting that fines are going to range from $500 to $1,500 per offense. And the damages may not be limited to the single call where the complaint was made. It may be extended to every single call you've made that's in violation of the rule using that particular technology. And of course, this action can be brought by any consumer that's received even one text or call that would be considered a violation. So what can you do without express one-to-one consent? And I've got a big asterisk at the end there, and the asterisk relates to DNC, or the do not call list. There are DNC registries where consumers can apply to a government organization, register their phone number, basically requesting to not be contacted through marketing communications unless they have given consent. So all of these things that you can see on this list here that are pretty typical activities for the modern real estate agent, you can do these, right? You don't need one-to-one consent for these things, as long as the person that you're contacting, specifically the phone number that you're either calling or texting, is not on the DNC list. And so, you know, things that you are doing every day in your business, you're making cell phone calls to your leads, you're potentially calling or texting your leads out of your CRM, out of Lofty. All of these things are okay to do as long as those folks aren't on the DNC list. So I'll just pause there real quick. Any questions on this, Tristan, or anything you want to kind of key in on?
Here, one question. The dialer has come up a few times in the comments. Where does that leave the dialer, assuming that we're doing everything correctly, meaning the leads come through, they sign up on the consent form, all is great, right? Where does that leave the dialer then?
Yeah, so it depends on what the dialer is, right? And mini disclaimer here, neither Megan or I are lawyers, right? We suggest if you have, you know, real concerns about this stuff, you should look into getting your own legal counsel advice. That being said, we've spent probably 3 months on calls with leading TCPA lawyers around the country. So we're pretty well versed on this. The advice that we're getting is that to be considered a dialer or an ATDS, it has to be a system that is either randomly or sequentially generating phone numbers. So you think of the most robotic, you know, random dialing system possible. It's not the intent of this rule was not to stop people being efficient by calling through their leads on a typical dialer that you might find in a CRM platform, or that your IVRs might be using to outreach to your lead lists.
Got it.
So that's one thing to know. The second thing, of course, is if you do get express one-to-one consent, then you can contact these people with any type of technology.
Correct. Yeah. Outside of that, outside of getting consent, cannot reach out to them with mass texting, mass robo dialing, sly broadcast, right? Any of that. Now, you can still reach out. This is the other question. You can still reach out to people on that are not on the do not call list one to one, meaning, you can still make those cold calls to geo prospecting areas or for rent by owners, all those, as long as they're not on the do not call and as long as you're not mass reaching out to them. Uh, Dave, the other question is there a place in Lofty or a system that you would recommend that people could go to check who is and who is not on the DNC list?
Yeah, so first of all, yeah, 100% agree with what you said, Tristan, with the one caveat that we believe you can still mass text your leads, as long as it is not coming from one of these things called an ATDS, and that you're not using some kind of AI generated voice message.
So as long as it's just you doing it individually, right? As a mass
Correct.
tech.
Yep.
Got it.
Yep. Right. Or as part of an automated follow-up program or a smart plan in Lofty, etc.
Perfect.
Yeah. And so to the question, remind me the question. Sorry.
Is there a place inside of Lofty that shows you who's on the
Oh,
DNC?
DNC scrub. Yeah. So there is not as of right now. You would have to go to the federal do not call list. As a business owner, you can download a list, and then you have to basically scrub your leads database against that list. It's a little bit painful, unfortunately. So our dev group is working on a solution for that. We plan to build in some kind of module into Lofty, so that you'll be able to scrub new leads, existing leads against the federal DNC at any time. And I don't know, do we
Dave?
have a view on when that would be available, Megan, or
Yeah.
is that kind of
Actually,
on the
I'm going to
on the
connect you, Dave and Megan. I'm going to connect you to Jesse Bedwine. He
Yep,
owns Call Action. In the meantime, you guys can probably use him because he could just grab everyone in your database, run them through a DNC, and then put them back. So I'll connect you to him. He's been in the business for a long time. You guys will love that.
awesome.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we did watch that webinar. I think that was a week or so ago, and it's call action is on our short list of companies that we're looking at. And that is something that we learned from talking with the TCPA lawyer, is that the do not call scrub is more important really than the changes to TCPA, because our platform really doesn't use a lot of these regulated technologies that the law is pointing at.
yeah, and to Megan's point, it's a lot easier to mess up on that than it is on the TCPA stuff, simply because most of the time you're not going to be using what they consider regulated tech when you're reaching out to your leads. All right, moving on. So these are things, of course, we sort of covered this in a different angle, but these are the things that you wouldn't want to do unless you have express one-to-one consent. That is, of course, contacting them via call or text using ATDS. It's the artificial voice calls, and it's that pre-recorded voicemail technology. That last one, we have a couple of features in Lofty that sort of cross into that area. So Megan will address that specifically and sort of show you how we're handling that here in a second. Just a couple of best practices. We have a full list of best practices for anyone who's interested. That's available at lofty.com/TCPA. We've got a blog article there with all of our FAQs, as well as some sort of descriptions of what Megan's going to show you guys today. But just quickly, of course, anytime you are capturing new leads or ingesting new leads, it's a good idea to try to obtain that express one-to-one consent, because firstly, you may find, even if you're not using regulated tech now, you may want to in the future. as well as the definition of regulated technology may change. It has changed in the past, and we don't know if when it could change again as technology evolves. So it's just a good thing to capture. You do want to update your website forms. Lofty platform by default forms are going to be updated with new best practice verbiage relating to TCPA, as well as this particular piece called an e-signature disclosure, which is sort of the digital certification of their one-to-one consent. And Megan will of course show you this as well. If anyone's not using Lofty, and frankly, even if you are, many folks use other technology components and connect with Lofty. You want to evaluate all of those tools, right? All of those marketing solutions. Reach out to those vendors, ask them if they have any concerns about their products, potentially violating TCPA, and or what they might be doing to address any issues or hopefully mitigate risk for you as a user of those products. And we just talked about it, right? It's maintaining your own DNC lists within the Lofty platform or within your CRM, or frankly, any of those marketing technologies that you're going to be calling or texting people from. And just trying to keep those things up to date is really important.
There's a good question by Joe, Dave, or Megan. What's up, Joe? Is Lofty going to be giving express consent to the open house sign-in platform?
Yes. Yep. We've updated the consent language really on any way of getting leads that Lofty has control over. So your Lofty Built website, open house forms, some of the ads, lead generation, some of them we can control what the consent is. So yes.
All right, it's time for the fun stuff. Enough of the legalese. So I'm going to get ready to hand over to Megan here. So she can show you specifically what we're doing to help customers with TCPA compliance. As I mentioned, Megan and I have been part of a sort of internal task force on this, working for the last 3 months with legal and with development to figure out what are the best ways we can help customers. And we've sort of come up with, you'll see here in a second, there's just 6 different areas that we looked at addressing. One is the addition of these consent statuses, which is going to help with visibility in terms of what type of consent you have to connect with different leads, ways of managing the pieces of Lofty that we consider regulated tech, the updates to web forms, some methods and tools for you to be able to obtain consent from existing leads. And then number 5, which I think is going to be really important, maintaining consent records. What we've done to address this, I think, is really, really cool. And I'm not sure if anyone else is doing it. You guys are going to love that. And then, of course, how do you handle third-party leads? So some sort of some guidance that we can provide in the application to help you set consent statuses and make some good choices there. So with that, I will stop sharing and hand things over to Megan.
Perfect. All right. Okay, so today I'm going to share, these are some updates in Lofty that went live today. So if you are a current Lofty user, you already have access to these. And I did see a note in the chat around the laws and regulation changes possibly getting delayed. That's definitely possible. The changes that we've made are really in the best practices that we know from the aspect of this is a law to protect consumers. And in theory, should really help protect your business because you're contacting people who have agreed to and are expecting to hear from you. So I'm going to go ahead and jump in. So the first one I want to get to is the various consent statuses. So the consent to contact is on the phone number. This regulation only affects calling and texting, so it doesn't affect any emails at all. So when a lead registers, you'll have the consent recorded for their phone number. And one lead could have many phone numbers with different consent statuses. So one thing that we built in is a filter over here. It'll be called TCPA number consent. And these are the consent statuses that we have in our system. If you are currently a Lofty user, unknown consent is going to be the default. So your current lead database, anyone who registered before today is going to have unknown consent. Unless their phone number exists on your internal DNC list, they'll have internal DNC as their status. So we have correlated that if you have been maintaining an internal do not contact list, that will pull over to their phone numbers.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so unknown will be the default. And then business relationship is going to be one of those things where if you have some kind of a business relationship with the client, you can mark that. And then we have system recorded consent and user recorded consent. These are the two that are the express written consent statuses. And system recorded consent means they registered through some kind of Lofty form where we can confirm that they gave consent. User recorded consent means you as the agent is saying they gave consent, but we don't have proof of that. So if it does come down to it, you do need to prove that you have consent to contact them if you mark this, but there is an option here so that you're really not being limited if you do rely on those regulated technologies that Dave mentioned, which we'll get into here in a minute. If you do rely on those and you want to make sure you're contacting leads, you can set this user recorded consent status. So if we check system recorded consent, I did go in and I registered through my own Lofty website earlier today. And so I can see over here, I have a green check next to the number I entered. Just this is a random number, so don't call it, guys. And we see our statuses here. And here I don't have the ability to edit this one. This was a system recorded consent. But for if it is, let's say, an unknown consent, let's clear my filters out and click on a different one. This one is unknown consent because they registered before today. I have this drop down where I can say, oh, I have a business relationship, or, oh, they said they don't want to be contacted. You can add them to your internal DNC right here. So the next thing I want to touch on here is the consent record. So if we click on the three dots menu, we have our view consent record. And this is something that we're generating, and all of your leads will have one of these. Just for most of them that registered before today, it's going to be pretty blank, but they will have one. And if they do go in and change their consent, it will be updated. So this is where I can see where I registered. It came in through my company website. I can see the information that was given. I can click to see what they agreed to. So if you ever change the terms of service or privacy policy, you can see what this specific lead agreed to. And we even have some of my device information here.
This is awesome, Megan. Great job. This makes me feel very comfortable.
I thought you'd love this part. Isn't it
This
great?
I hadn't seen this, guys. So this makes me happy inside. So thank you.
Yeah, and just to clarify, I mean, this is an update that went live today. So if you have leads that register through your website today, they'll have something like this. This is the updated checkbox language that if you have a Lofty website that you haven't already customized that disclaimer, we've updated it for you with language that has been approved by the lawyer that we talked to. Yeah.
Megan, if we're going to add a brand new lead, like that I just met door knocking or expired or anything, does it have a consent form? What's that process like?
Yeah, so they will have one, but if you manually add that lead, their consent status by default is just going to be unknown. So you would want to send them through some kind of a way to get their consent, and we do have a way to get that. If you want to download this here, you can download it as a PDF. So if you ever need a copy of it, you've got that. And if you have, because I know if you are a current Lofty agent, you probably have thousands of leads in here, and they're all going to be marked for the most part as unknown consent today. So we do have an email that you can send out to send to your leads to request consent. And this can be sent one-off, or it can be sent in mass. If you come back to your people page, and if you select at least one lead, you have the option to send a consent request email. And this, we've configured it for you. It's in the automated email section. And you can edit it if you want to, but this is basically what it looks like, and it directs them to your Lofty Built website to go in and re-enter their phone number and confirm on the new consent language to agree to be contacted. And if they complete this, they'll have that system recorded consent.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just quick on that one. We probably should have mentioned earlier, but all of these changes and ways that we're addressing things, it's only specific to phone calls and text messages, not emails. So emails all good.
Yep. Yeah, so you can still continue to email your database as much as you want. It's really just the calling and texting, and specifically the regulated technologies that Dave was talking about. So in Lofty, those are two features that we've determined. And like I said, we're not giving legal advice, but this is the advice that we got from legal. So that is going to be the first one here in voice messages, the outbound call voice messages. So this is if you're using Lofty to call out, you have that option to drop a voicemail into their voicemail box that you've already recorded. When you come in here today, you're going to have this configure consent settings option. And by default, you're only going to be able to drop voicemails to leads that have system recorded consent as their phone number status. If you click here, you do have the option to also enable this for phone numbers that have the user recorded consent status. So basically what this is doing is restricting you from dropping pre-recorded voicemails to any leads that you don't have express written consent for. So this doesn't stop you from calling them or texting them or even speaking and saying a voicemail. If you hit their voicemail box, you can still speak on it. It's just stopping you from dropping that pre-recorded voicemail. So like I said, if that's something that you really rely on in your business, this is the kind of thing where you're going to want to start getting that consent from your leads. And any leads that register through a platform that Lofty has control over should have that system recorded consent starting today.
On
Yeah, I
the
think
on
this
the
is
boiler. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think this is a really good example of sort of the approach we took in development around this, which is we really didn't want to restrict customers or users from doing things, but we wanted to create more visibility, and then we wanted to sort of help them understand what they're doing before they do it, to sort of de-risk it. But ultimately, the final decision is still in their hands. And in this case, if they are comfortable that they've got consent for all of those folks, then they can use that piece of technology.
Yep. Yeah. And you can always come in here and change this if you want to. And once you go in and configure that, you can see your outbound voice messages. And even if you don't come in and click that button, you can still drop voicemails to system recorded consent phone numbers. Let's see. Let's get into the updated registration language, because this is something that we updated automatically for all Lofty Built websites. There's about 13 websites that have customized their disclaimer language. So if you're one of those 13, you'll likely have leads coming in as user recorded consent instead of system recorded consent. But if you haven't previously edited the disclaimer language, which is here next to the checkbox on a Lofty Built website, they'll be updated for you automatically. And this is where they just check the box, and if they agree to this and hit submit, any leads that click this, the phone number that they provide right here is going to be marked as system recorded consent. And then there's no restrictions on that. And that even applies to like federal or national DNC lists. If they are on a national DNC registry, but you have their written consent, you can still call them. they've given consent to you as a business. The other thing that we've changed here is the ability to add additional parties. So this could be maybe you have a lender that you work with or some other partner that you share information with. You can put their information here, you know, whatever you want. You can add, I don't think there's a limit. You check a box basically saying, I understand that I am asking for consent. And if you do this, it adds it changes the wording a little bit and moves the checkbox down. So there's a select all. So if you have multiple, you can add multiple here. And then they would check the box next to who they want to be contacted. So we've built in an option to get agreement to be contacted by multiple parties as well.
And I'm assuming the ads you guys are building, Facebook and Google all have those as well. All those, perfect. That's what I
Yeah,
thought.
yep. Like someone earlier had mentioned like an open house form, which I can show you that really quick.
You're pulling it up. Yeah, listen, everyone, this is recorded. I know some of you had to jump off at the 30-minute mark. This is recorded. It'll be sent out to you. Don't worry, guys. Megan, Dave, keep going. So don't worry. Even if we go for an extra 20 minutes, I'm gonna make Yang make you co-host because I have to jump off to another meeting. But this is so good. I want you guys to keep going. So just keep going.
Sure. Yeah, so the same disclaimer language has automatically been added to open house forms like here. So basically they're entering their information, their phone number, and checking the box and agreeing. And the biggest thing that we learned with TCPA is they have to agree to give consent on the same form that they're giving their phone number. So this consent language will apply to the phone number that they're providing here. The last couple of things I want to touch on is third-party consent. So these would be leads that are coming in from a source that is not lofty. It's maybe one of these like Zillow, Realtor. By default, we have these coming in as unknown consent, but you have the option to change that to business relationship or user recorded consent. And for all purposes in the system, unknown consent and business relationship have the exact same functionality. Neither one of these can be dropped pre-recorded voicemails or sent slide broadcast ringless voicemails. It's really just for your own use. Because unknown can be complicated. If you have talked to this person, the consent is not necessarily unknown. So we've called this business relationship, but this doesn't tie into established business relationship logic, which can vary a lot based off of that business relationship. So these two consent statuses logically function the same. It's just a designator for you that you can use to sort your leads in your database. User recorded consent are the ones that can receive those pre-recorded voicemails, slide broadcasts, ringless voicemail drops. So here you can mark this, and now any leads that come in through Zillow would be marked as their phone numbers would be marked as user recorded consent. And we have a similar setting for all of these other ones. So by default, all of these will have unknown consent, but you can select either business relationship or user recorded consent. I do want to reiterate, if you do select user recorded consent, you do want to make sure that you get consent. So if one of these lead providers does share with you the consent that that lead agreed to, then you can definitely mark it as user recorded consent. You don't want to click this just as a loophole to be able to drop voicemails. That's where you might get yourself in trouble. So Dave, I think I covered everything. Is there something I'm missing or any questions?
Yeah, I've been answering questions as quick as I can in the chat. But let me see here. See if there's any that are worth sort of calling out. Someone wanted to know if this affects the AI assistant at all.
No, we haven't made any changes to the AI assistant. I've heard that there might be some regulations around AI coming soon, so it's something we're keeping our eye on, but we have not made any changes to the AI assistant. I guess there is one other change that we did make is for the internal do not contact list, which is here. You have your do not contact list, and this is something where Previously, this would be something that you would just add the numbers to manually. Now, if any of those leads opt out to receiving text messages, which would be like this text message language, if they do unsubscribe, that's the same thing as opting out, and this will put their number on your internal DNC list. That's another thing that legal counsel that we talked to recommended, so that is a change we implemented. And for all legal purposes, a call and a text are the same thing. So if they opt out of being texted, they're also opting out of being called. So that just moves them to the internal DNC list. And when they're on your internal DNC list, you don't have the ability to call or text them at all. Can still email them. So if you want to try and get consent from them, you still can. But if they don't opt in to being called or texted, then you won't be able to call or text them, even a one-off.
Yeah, we'll try to hit a couple more of these that have come in through the chat. There's one here about leads that are either sort of manually entered or imported. I'm assuming those will all just come in as unknown status, Megan, unless you set the status differently.
Yeah. So if you add a lead manually, when you add in their phone number, you have the option to set it as a certain consent status, but by default, it will be unknown. But if we look at our people page, like here's a number that was unknown here, and it has this little question mark icon. I could come in here and say, business relationship, save. Now it changes. Functionally, that doesn't really change anything. I still can't drop this number a pre-recorded voicemail. I before could still call or text them, but you can go in and organize that. We also do have an option to mass organize your leads. So if you do have leads that have given written consent, you can update that here. But the system recorded consent is only a setting that Lofty has. If we can verify that consent was given, then system recorded consent is there. Otherwise, you have the option to use user recorded consent, which is the same thing as system recorded consent, but on their consent record, we obviously can't capture the consent that they gave.
Yeah, great. I think that's you already covered consent forms on ad programs, right? Like Google and Facebook, etc.
Yeah, it's something I talked to with our lead gen team. I think it depends on the platform. Sometimes they do have the ability to change that consent language, and sometimes they don't. I believe Facebook ads will have the new language, but it is something to talk. If you are doing Lofty lead gen, it's something to talk to your associate there. The consent request email. It won't be mass emailed to everyone. It will only be mass emailed to the ones you select. So here I selected these two. If I send the consent request email, it's only going to send to those two. If you select all of the leads, it will send to all of them. You can also send it in a one-off on a lead profile.
Good one here about the consent forms. Can we send the consent forms out through a smart plan for consumers that are already in our system? I assume as a way of sort of trying to mass obtain consent for existing database.
Yeah, we don't have it built into a smart plan step. It's kind of the same idea as the welcome email. You can send like a welcome email one-off to leads, or you can mass send the welcome email, but there's not a way to include that in the smart plan.
All right, thank you, Megan. I think that's most of the new stuff that's coming in. Hopefully we covered sort of the biggest areas and the most common questions. If there was anything that we missed, please don't hesitate to reach out to your account specialist or Lofty support if you're a customer, or if you're not a customer and just want to learn more about how Lofty can help you increase productivity and make more money in your business, as well as some of these things that we've done to sort of help you operate in compliance with the TCPA updates. We'd certainly love to hear from you too. Come visit us at lofty.com. Just fill out a form there, and we'll be happy to have that conversation. Otherwise, I hope this has been helpful for everyone. Thank you again, Megan. Appreciate all your expertise. Until next time, goodbye and good night.
Yeah, and I posted the link to the Lofty Help Center article on our TCPA update. So if you are a Lofty user and you want to see what's changed on your account today, check out that article and you can see everything I went over for yourself.